Hi, I'm Emily Janke. I direct the Institute for Community and Economic Engagement here at UNCG. That's the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, for those of you who aren't familiar with UNCG as an acronym. And I also am an associate professor in the Peace and Conflict Studies department here. So the Institute reports to the Vice Chancellor for Research and Engagement, and IC serves as one highly visible point of contact for the university around community engagement and public service. And really what that means is that we have a lot of data to collect around who's doing what, where, with whom, for what purposes. And so to do that, we have a few things and resources that we've developed and collected, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about. One of them is a database to be able to collect that information across our university so that we do have a good sense of about 300 of the projects and partnerships that are happening on our campus. And we intend to be collecting more and more as we understand the full portrait and landscape of our community engagement efforts. Our office also helps to support community engaged scholarship, especially I should say at this moment, with supporting promotion and tenure documentation as well as evaluation. So quite a bit of professional development for faculty as well as departments more broadly. What I'd like to talk to you today about is the critical issue of metrics and of creating measures and benchmarks around community and institutional impacts. And my hope is that I can provide a few minutes of an overview of where we are in terms of the field and some of the lessons I've learned in terms of implications of where we are and where we might be going. So to give a little bit of background about my experience is that I've also served as the co-chair for the task force for the UNC system, which is 16 campuses here, on a task force for community and economic engagement metrics. And so what we needed to do was to provide indicators of progress for community engagement and economic development. This would be an annual report for all institutions to report to general administration, and this was required from President Tom Ross as part of his effort to be able to tell the story of community engagement and economic development contributions to the state of North Carolina and to help rekindle and recapture the love of our citizens, was the way he put it. So community engagement metrics are especially relevant right now for a few reasons. We've got annual awards and accreditation, such as the Presidential Honor Roll. We have the Civic Engagement Higher Education Awards. So there are all sorts of things that we are starting to be able to apply for and be able to talk about why we are a civically engaged campus or a steward of place. We also have accreditation systems that are regional that are asking us about our public service and community engagement. Sometimes they conflate the two, but sometimes, and hopefully increasingly, we'll be able to separate them out. But the Southern Accreditation of Colleges and Schools here asks about institutional effectiveness around public service and community. I think public and community service is how they phrase it. And so we need to be able to document not only the programs that we offer, but also how we're assessing those programs and then using those assessments to improve our programs and our outcomes. Of course, there's the Carnegie elective designation for community engagement, which many of us have done, and our campus is no exception. As well as part of our strategic plan internally here at UNCG looks at how do we track our progress in supporting community engagement. And so the last cycle of the strategic plan really focused on setting up structures. And so we're hoping the next will be looking at really looking more at outcomes or outputs of community engagement. So not only do we have IC, this institute that I direct here, but also we have promotion and tenure guidelines in place. What's the next phase? How are we going to include that, and what metrics do we need? And then we, as the UNC system, are now required to annually track community engagement along a number of metric areas, including student curricular engagement, funding for this kind of work. We are also looking at participation for public service events and those kinds of things. And so if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can go on the IC's website, communityengagement@uncg.edu. So it's my belief that accountability will continue to drive this agenda forward. Also that we as institutions are needing to distinguish what it is that we are. So we're thinking more about our identity internally as well as the image that we're projecting externally to our constituents, to show really the full contributions of our campuses beyond the enrollments that we offer through regular courses and admissions. I think because of the standard definitions that have been established by the field and then really solidified by Carnegie's designation process around what is community engagement, what's public service, what's outreach, what's service learning, I think we're at a point now where we are feeling better about the kinds of metrics that we can collect. And as a field, there have been at least a handful, if not a dozen, different review articles or white papers or synthesis documents that talk about the various data collections from the different initiatives that have been established over the last decade. So some of those will be familiar to you, the work of the Hanover report, Angie Hart's work at the University of Brighton. She's provided some reviews. The Campus Community Partnerships for Health, they provided some reviews. Campus Compact, both nationally as well as at the state level, they've been reviewing that. And then again, the work of University of North Carolina. Our system efforts reviewed the work, as well as University of Minnesota. Andy Furco and his colleagues there have all done a really good job of really scouring the literature. And so now we have all of these hundreds of metrics to choose from. So where are we now? So from my experience, I think there are a few implications of the work in terms of telling institutional and community impacts and outcomes. First is that we need to think about what are the indicators, what are those metrics, those pulse points that we can collect annually and track to understand sort of our scope of engagement. We cannot jump to the outcomes, the so what, the larger story, until we really have a better sense of what is the landscape of engagement on our campuses. Because right now we're capturing very, very small percentages. When we think about service learning courses, if they're designated on our campuses, they might account for only 1 to 3 or 4% of our students or our courses that are offered. So how are we thinking about the larger contributions to our universities and colleges to our communities and society more generally? So thinking about indicators as being valuable because they tell us the landscape of engagement, and then also thinking about outcomes as really research projects that are focused on some of those individual goals and priorities that we're looking for that might be very contextualized to our communities. And so what are some of those research projects? I'd also like to think about what are those 5 items, if we could come up with 5 or 10, that we might ask our community partners on annual surveys or feedback forms about their experiences with the community, about their outcomes. Because I think that's a part where we don't have a lot of our community partners' voices around what are the contributions. A lot of that in the early stages may be qualitative research, but I'm hoping that we can also begin to maybe get to some of the more quantitative large data sets as more and more universities use common platforms for this kind of data collection and reporting of not only indicators but also outcomes. Finally, I want to think about how we are starting to track our collective, or our role in collective impact in communities. So thinking about those community indicators, such as reading at grade level 3 or algebra by grade 8 or the number of physicians in our communities, whatever those community priorities might be, and looking at those numbers that are tracked either by a county or a city or some other sort of census, and be able to begin to track, so that indicate who is involved across our campuses, and then be able, or to collect, I should say, some of those indicators so that there are X number of participants, faculty, staff, students participating in those endeavors or those programs that are aimed towards alleviating or solving or addressing those community identified priorities. But also then going the next step and evaluating some of those programs to be able to show more of a cause and effect relationship that these programs really did have a significant impact on literacy, for example. And so thinking about our role in collective impact as one member of the greater community. So thank you so much to everyone for listening, and I really am excited to learn more about what you come up with and would enjoy being a part of it in the future. Thanks so much.